world's number one in diabetes. The, the ratio of the population to the number of patients is the highest in Pakistan. Second number is India, then China, and then United States. This is quite a tragic situation. And there are many factors to this. So if I started discussing the factors that are contributing towards diabetes, I think we can sit here for 2-3 hours and just discuss the factors. The stresses of the common life, the pollutants, the impurities in the food, the environment, the socioeconomic status, and then the food habits, the foods that we say in our language, at least in Punjabi, the khabas that we eat, that all contributes right from the very childhood towards our adult age. And I was discussing yesterday, there was a professor from UK, actually this morning, there was a professor from UK and we were discussing that trauma of childhood leads to early diseases. So if somebody was going to develop diabetes, let's say at the age of 50 or 60, and if they had childhood trauma, they might develop diabetes at the age of 40 or 50. So there are many such factors. Pakistan has the highest level of diabetes. The second thing that I see for Pakistan is, as much as there is a lot of diabetes, there is a very small amount of correct education about it. I see a lot of people, and Dr. Angelique, I'm speaking English for you as well, but if you don't mind, I'll occasionally switch back to Urdu language too for the remaining audience, just for connecting a bit more. But I'll continue to translate that into English as well. So जो हमारा डायबिटीज़ की तालीम है वो इतनी बुरी है कॉमन बंदे के लिए, इवन हमारे डॉक्टर्स के लिए, कि द मैनेजमेंट ऑफ डायबिटीज़ हैज़ बिकम अ प्रॉब्लम. सो द अदर इम्पोर्टेंट थिंग, ये इफ वी कैन अंडरस्टैंड दिस वन फैक्टर, diabetes is a symptom of chronic inflammatory state of the body, or an outcome of the chronic inflammatory state of the body. What does that mean? Before diabetes happened, I'm talking about type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes has genetic factors, immunological factors. Type 2 diabetes, the acquired diabetes, is because of the malfunction, incorrect function of our cells. So our cells start malfunctioning, they stop responding to insulin, or they reduce their response to insulin, they become insulin resistant, then the diabetes happens. So that means, as a physician, when you're looking at diabetes, you have to look at what caused it. जब भी आप डायबिटीज देखें किसी में, तो उसमें आपने ये देखना है कि क्यों हुई है इसको डायबिटीज. अब आप सोचिए, एज ए डॉक्टर, generally we don't think about that. Why did this patient become diabetic? We only think about, how can I diagnose this person with diabetes? Is the criteria for diagnosis met? If that is met, I'm going to call this person diabetic. I'm going to diagnose them diabetic. And then here is the protocol. I'm going to start with metformin first line, and then I'll do the following things, and that's it. And then for the remaining part of their life, I'm going to say, this is a chronic progressive disease. They are just continuing to have more and more symptoms, and slowly some side effects would take over their life and they would die off. The other thing, once diabetes happens, there are then tertiary problems that start occurring. For example, renal failure because of diabetes, or cardiovascular issues, or strokes. These are secondary to diabetes. So in general mainstream medicine, we say diabetes is a primary disease and these are secondary. I call them tertiary. तीसरे level पे. Why? Because at the first level, there is inflammation, chronic inflammation. That gives rise to diabetes. Then diabetes causes chronic elevation of glucose, which gives rise to other diseases. So, if you can control diabetes, you don't only control the diabetes, सिर्फ शुगर कंट्रोल नहीं हो रही, बल्कि वो जो secondary diseases हैं वो भी कंट्रोल हो रही. So मेरा question, we discuss this every time we meet. My question to you is, do you know the mechanism for how we become resistant to insulin? So with your comment or show of hand, how many of us are comfortable that we understand how do we become resistant to insulin? And I would actually tell you that we know that cells become resistant. We still do not know the mechanism of resistance. So PPAR gamma receptor, or the machinery, the system within the cell that we blame all the time, that is the reason. So I'm going to start sharing my screen as well. Sir, is that okay if I can share my screen and draw a
It's
little?
okay, sir. It's okay, sir.
Okay, so I am. Okay, so I'm going to set up my windows so I can see the participant. And if you have any questions, please write them down in the comments area. If I have a chance, I would respond to that right away, otherwise later on. So this is just my notes that I need to discuss today, but let's start from here. Let's say this is a cell. This cell, for some reason, becomes insulin resistant. It was fine before, now it is insulin resistant. Why? And you would hear this very commonly. They would say, well, this happens because of age. Or this happens because of epigenetics. Or this happens because of, with age, our cellular machinery becomes aged. Machinery doesn't work well. So Dr. Angelique says, we like to think we know, but we don't know. Yes, we don't know. We really do not know. Actually, if you do research on the mechanism of insulin resistance, we actually don't know. We are building the whole management process over a conjecture that we develop resistance because of PPR gamma systems failure. So there are many answers. Somebody would say age, epigenetic, cellular mechanisms. If you remember, I discuss this in every talk, and I would say that again for today as well for our audience. Our system, our cells cannot be older than 15 days. Do you remember from our last discussion that our cells cannot be older than 15 days? And our whole body, except some pieces, for example, calcium depositions in the...
Except some cell.
Yeah, except some pieces, for example, calcium deposition or other minerals that are deposited here and there, our whole body, all the proteins are replaced within 3 months. All proteins of our body are replaced within 3 months. For a cell, the cell membrane, you know that cell membrane, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, is continuously making the new cell membrane or phospholipids that are coming out of the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and they're becoming part of the cell membrane and the other membranes within the organelle of the cell. The whole cellular membrane system is replaced within 15 days. Similarly, the mitochondria, their life is 10 to 15 days as well. Golgi operators, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, rough endoplasmic reticulum, all the structures of the cell. Microtubules, when something goes from the point A to B, a microtubule is formed. The dynein motors, or those little machines that come into existence. They are created. जो मशीनें वो चीज़ों को उठाकर पॉइंट ए से पॉइंट बी तक लेके जाती हैं, उसके बाद ये जो माइक्रोट्यूब्यूल है, ये जो छोटी सी सड़क बनाई हुई है, this will be torn down, it will be removed. So microtubule is made and then broken down within half an hour. DNA can live very long. Even DNA undergoes continuous repair and maintenance. So if I said here that majority of our body is refreshed every 3 months completely, and majority of our cells are refreshed within 15 days, then the idea that somehow age is responsible for us to have diabetes or other diseases is actually an incorrect idea. Age should not be the factor. Now, I will give you some concessions. For example, in the blood vessels, the walls of the blood vessels develop atherosclerotic plaques. These are foam cells and these are calcifications or the calcium depositions or other atherosclerotic material that is sitting in there that can live on for decades. 10 saal, 20 saal, 30 saal, end of our life. So that plaque can be there forever. Similarly, there are other such structures that can get stuck in our body and they can be there forever. The point I'm making is, compared to a baby, एक बच्चा और हमारा cell, एक बड़ा, our cells are actually the same age. They do not have a reason to be old. We develop, so you can actually start showing me your wrinkles on your face and say, why do I have wrinkles? Why does Mubin has wrinkle on his face? The reason for that is that collagen is another molecule which can live on for half-life of collagen is 18 years. So it lives on for a very long time. And so when collagen is deteriorated or damaged, that damage, or when collagen becomes loose and lax, that can actually live on for a very long time. And that is how one of the reasons that we develop wrinkles and other structures like that. If we leave those things alone, our cells are replenished or refreshed within 15 days. And all our proteins are refreshed within 3 months. For such a person, should they actually have a disease because of age? No. We should not have a disease because of age. So then what is the problem? How do we get diabetes? So let's start from there. Remember, I say this every single time. I think you would now know that you can remember my lecture by heart. There is a basic problem somewhere in our body. There is inflammation. So those of you who are practicing or will practice, this is a very important part of understanding the diseases of our patient. Somewhere in the body, inflammation occurs. This inflammation, and I'll explain a little more later, this inflammation stays on for a longer period of time. So I would like you, आपसे मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा, अभी से सोचना शुरू करें कि क्यों, what kind of inflammation is this that would live on for a long period of time? So think about that while I come back to this in a second. So there is inflammation. It lives on for a longer time. This inflammation causes the cells to start developing damaged proteins. Because if you think about what is the mechanism of inflammation? What happens in inflammation? This is not the pathology inflammation, the tissue repair with intention type 1 and intention type 2. That is inflammation as well. That's a different mechanism. Here we are talking about the mechanism where the cell is continuously inflamed. So what is happening in that cell? We are continuously having reactive oxygen species being produced in the cell. These sentences are not useless or not something to just ignore. We have continuous production of reactive oxygen species inside of our cells. हमारे cells के अंदर reactive oxygen species है. क्यों है? क्या बच्चा जो है 2 years old, 3 years old, do they not have reactive oxygen species? Is it necessary that a 50 years or 60 years or 70 years should have the reactive oxygen species? Why does a 50 years old, I am 56, why does a 50-year-old develop a problem with the reactive oxygen species and a child does not? Why is there inflammation causing reactive oxygen species which cause damage to the cell in a 50 years old, causing diabetes, then causing other diseases, and not in a child? Or I'll say this, when you were younger, you are still young, but when you were younger, you will eat a naan or a bread or carbohydrates and nothing would happen. You'll be fine. And now you, let's say if you are 60 or 70 or you have diabetes, you eat one slice and then you pay the price the whole day that the sugar is all over the place. Why? सोचने की बात है. And I would suspect that everyone here is a physician. And so everyone knows actually what is going on. We are just being on the same page. हम एक ही सफ़े पे आना चाह रहे हैं. हम ये बात को सारे करना चाह रहे हैं कि इकट्ठे समझ लें. आती सबको ये बात. What happens is the following. Something happens to the cell. Shaista says BMR is different. No, that is not really the
That is not
basic problem.
Shaista.
Good answer, but that's not the reason here. So something happens. I'm still going to leave it as something. Something happens that causes mitochondria of the cell to drive fast. What is that something? Carbohydrates are one such thing. So imagine if we are eating carbohydrates. Carbohydrates enter our cell. They enter the cell and they go to the electron transport chain eventually, right? So all fuels finally deliver their molecules, their electrons, to electron transport chain in the mitochondria, right? Through the NADH and FADH2. Now in the electron transport chain, we have, so if I make electron transport chain complex 1, complex 2, complex 3, complex 4, then ATP synthase, correct? This is the electron transport chain. Complex 1 receives the electron from the fuels. Complex 2 receives the electron from the fuels that we eat. Roti pani jo khaya hai, uske electron chalege in complexes ko. Wahan se electrons are shifted to complex 3. From there they go to complex 4. From there they become carbon dioxide and water. And the hydrogens that were thrown out, those hydrogens come back through the ATP synthase and we make ATP. I do not want to teach electron transport chain over here. The important thing I want to teach here is that complex 1 and complex 3 can leak electrons. It is natural. It is physiological that complex 1 and complex 3 leak electrons in the environment. When you eat food, imagine that you have eaten a slice of bread. 5%, 2 to 5% of this bread will become leaked in the environment of the cells. It is normal, it is needed because that leaked electrons, they will react with oxygen to make reactive oxygen species. Those reactive oxygen species are needed inside the cell for many physiological functions plus for signaling mechanisms. And again, I do not want to go in the detail of what signaling mechanism, but they are a laboratory for the antioxidant testing. ये जो इलेक्ट्रॉन लीक हो रहे हैं, इसको आप ऐसे समझिए कि आप घर में किसी जगह पानी फेंकें और देखिए उससे क्या डैमेज होता है. You spill some water in the home and see what kind of damage happens. If no damage occurs, you say, all right, this place is good. It's nicely built. Let's say you spill some water in the washroom and that does not show up in the walls and you say, good, nicely built house. So some reactive oxygen species are produced intentionally in the cell, physiologically in the cell, to test the antioxidant defense mechanisms if they are working or not. घर में आग लगा के देखते हैं कि आग बुझाने वाले सिस्टम चल रहे हैं कि नहीं. गुड. So 2 to 5% of antioxidants, reactive oxygen species are normal. However, it is possible that when these electron transport systems chains are not working correctly, when these are not working correctly, they would leak more electrons than wanted, than desired. हम चाहते थे सिर्फ 2 से 5% लीक हो, they are leaking 10%, 15% electrons. Those extra electrons that are leaked, so please pay attention now. Those extra electrons that are leaked, I'm coming here to this cell now, that are leaked in the environment of the cell, they will make reactive oxygen species and reactive lipid species. These species will attack the structures of the cell, the enzymes of the cell, the structures of the cell, the proteins in the cell. When a reactive oxygen species passes near a protein, it will steal an electron from the protein. This is like if somebody passes near you and they grab your purse and go away, run away. What will happen? Would you like it? No, you'll become upset and you'll become angry and you'll run after them. Similarly, when the reactive oxygen species passes near a protein, it takes or steals an electron from it. That causes that protein to become damaged. We try to repair that protein. The physiology and pathology folks over here, you know this, that we have 3 repair mechanisms. We have the very first repair mechanism, which is called chaperone assisted repairs or chaperone mediated repairs. So there are chaperone proteins, helpful protein, वो आती हैं, वो आके लग जाती हैं इस प्रोटीन के साथ और इसको रिपेयर करने की कोशिश करती हैं. Then if that does not work, then there is ubiquitination, which is the recycling of the protein. ये प्रोटीन काम नहीं कर रही, ठीक भी नहीं हो रही, आप कहते हैं अच्छा यार इसको मार दो, इसके amino acids निकाल लो, get the amino acids out and reuse them to make proteins again. If that does not happen, you're trying to recycle this protein. This is what is happening in your patient's body. This is what's happening in your body. If you understand this basic foundation, you can handle a lot of chronic diseases. So everything here is a very important topic. So I'm not just speaking because मुझे शौक है बोलने का. These are important topics. So the protein is damaged. What is the solution? The first solution was to repair it with the help of chaperones. Imagine that does not happen because the protein is too damaged. The second, this is like something is broken. You have a cup that got broken and it has gotten so many pieces that you can't just put it back together. Then you try to recycle it with ubiquitination. If that works, good. If that does not work, because the protein is even more damaged, then we need autophagy to repair or recycle this protein. Here is where the fasting Ramadan connects with diabetes control and disease control. Fasting causes autophagy. Fasting triggers autophagy. So I will leave this topic here. इसको मैं यहाँ इस हवा में छोड़ रहा हूँ ये topic को, and I'm going to go here for a second and talk about autophagy for a second to go back afterwards. देखिए, this is your cell. This cell lives in 2 environments. Either या तो ये cell है खाता पीता हुआ, eating and well-fed cell. Well-fed. It's a happy cell. It's well-fed. You are eating in the morning. You are eating in the evening, noon. You are eating maybe even late. You are eating snacks. The food is coming in. Cell is happy. It's a well-fed cell. The other state of the cell is fasting cell. Fasting can be mild fasting or severe fasting. Fasting can be short fasting, intermediate fasting, long fasting. ठीक? There are various scales of fasting. But the cell can be in the fasting state or it can be in the well-fed state. Tell me this honestly. Normally, your cells are in well-fed state or fasting state. You eat in the morning, then you eat lunch, then you eat dinner. You may even eat snacks during the breaks within these meals. Is that a well-fed state or not?
Yes, well-fed state.
That's a well-fed state. That well-fed state stays forever from our childhood. Think about a mother continuously looking at the baby to say, do you need to eat something? Do you need to eat? Why don't you eat this? Why don't you eat this? Why don't you eat this? From that time till today, your food is always there. Your cells are always eating. Then comes Ramadan, fasting time. And I want to show you something with sadness. I want to show you some studies in Ramadan. What do you think the studies of the Ramadan will show fasting glucose levels to be reduced or not? Will show hemoglobin A1C levels to be reduced or not? What do you think? I want to show you a couple of studies done on Ramadan or fasting people.
Yes,
What do you think would
reduced.
happen? Yes, hemoglobin A1C should be reduced, right? Fasting glucose levels should be reduced, right? The diseases should reduce, diabetes should reduce. I would show you the studies that show that actually in the fasting, Muslims' hemoglobin A1C increases. क्यों?
Style
Why?
of our ferry and Aftari.
So let me show you the study so you don't say that hey, Mubin is just making things up. So here is a study, Ramadan fasting and glycemic control in patients with type 2 diabetes, a real world data analysis. In Muslims with type 2 diabetes, fasting during the Ramadan increases the risk of their hemoglobin A1C levels rising by more than 0.5%. क्यों? Why?
हम सहरी अफ्तारी करते हैं. The style of our सहरी and Aftari.
Yes, that is the sadness with which I am coming to discuss this with you. We have such a beautiful mechanism to become healthy. In theory, Muslims who do fasting and the other religions who do proper fasting, if they do proper fasting, should not have chronic diseases. But we all have chronic diseases. And here is a study that is showing you this is a study done across spanning across 6 years, 2011 to 2016. And they're saying Muslims' age hemoglobin A1C actually increases in Ramadan compared to non-Muslims. So if we sit here and say, well, being Muslims and Ramadan, we get the benefit of, diabetes is reduced and diseases are reduced, that is actually wrong. Diabetes is increased. Diseases are increased. Otherwise, if fasting was helping us, and it's not fast's problem, फास्ट का कसूर नहीं है, लेकिन जिस तरह की फास्टिंग हम करते हैं, the type of fasting we do with 10 times more food and fried foods that we eat, the kind of fasting we do, if that was helping us, we will not be the world's top diabetic country. So I want among patients with type 2 diabetes, systemic review and meta-analysis. This is 2023 study. And sadly, if you see here, however, the difference in body weight in fasting patients after Ramadan fasting versus the pre-fasting stage was non-significant. कुछ नहीं हुआ. थोड़ा सा फर्क पड़ता है. There's a tiny bit of a difference in hemoglobin A1C. किसी में कम हो गया, किसी में ज़्यादा हो गया. Some have lesser hemoglobin A1C, some have more. Is that really how we should fast? So I want to put this to you, that even when we celebrate fasting, we feel great about it. This is spiritually an amazing time and all of that. We actually have bad habits of fasting. So now when I'm going to talk about this cell here and talk about fasting here, I don't mean the fasting that we do. I mean actual fasting. Now, let me show you something else. Here is a study which I show almost every time. Dr. Jason Fung of Canada, he's a nephrologist in Canada, right? Very popular on YouTube as well. He popularized intermittent fasting. This is intermittent fasting study. Our fasting, Muslims fasting, is actually a bit more strong than intermittent fasting. In the intermittent fasting, the duration is smaller. Secondly, you can eat things. You can drink coffee. You can drink broth, etc. You can eat a kheera, cucumber. But in our fasting, no tea, no fluids, nothing, no intakes. Even this fasting, intermittent fasting, which is weaker than the Muslim fasting, this one, 3 cases here, I show it every time. Look at the patients, 40 years of age, type 2 diabetic for 20 years, hypertensive, hypercholesterolemic. Other patient, 52 years of age, 25 years for diabetes. Patient 3, 67 years of age, 10 years in diabetes, all insulin dependent. They all had their insulin stopped within 3 weeks of intermittent fasting because their cells recovered. Why do our cells not recover when we fast? Because we destroy our cells during Ramadan by eating more than we should and then sleeping. Sahri khao aur so jao. That is such a tremendously destructive mechanism. Sleep during the day. That is such destructive mechanism. Do not sleep at night. Ramadan, this is what we do. We have the iftar and then we stay awake for the whole night and do fun things, and then we eat in the morning and then go to sleep. The sleep not having at night causes stress hormones to be released, which cause inflammation. So all the wrong things are what we do during Ramadan. So when we talk about Ramadan, I am talking about that fasting that is correct fasting, not incorrect fasting. So with that, back here, the cell can be in the well-fed state and in the starving state. In the well-fed state, the cell is in growth phase. How does the cell know that I'm in a well-fed state? The cell has receptors for anabolic state or nutritionally fed state. What are those receptors? For example, insulin receptor not only acts as insulin receptor, but it also acts as a growth receptor for the cell that, hey, presence of insulin means there is food out there. That is why insulin came in. If there was glucose, the person ate glucose, आपने glucose खाया, जिसकी वजह से insulin release हुई, जिसकी वजह से cell को message मिला कि insulin है. तो cell got the message that, all right, there must be glucose out there. That means I can start growing. I can start making new proteins. I can start making new things. Similarly, growth hormones presence. Similarly, presence of amino acids in the environment. So there are many sensors of the cell that are looking at the environment, and they are looking at the nutritional state of the environment. If the state is nutritionally active and there is lots of nutrition, the cell puts itself in the growth phase. There is an mTOR protein that becomes activated that puts the cell in the growth phase. I'm sure that you know the mTOR and AMPK pathways that are kind of controlling the well-fed states and the growth phase and the autophagy state. If the cell is starving, meaning for some hours there is no food out there, then the cell will have mTOR system suppressed, absence of nutrition outside of the cell suppresses the mTOR system, which then activates the autophagy. 8 hours of fasting to 16 hours of fasting to 24 hours of fasting activates the autophagy. So now you tell me another thing. Think about your patient, think about yourself, think about your parents, think about your families. You tell me.
Professor Mubin, can I ask one question here? What is
Ji,
the
please.
what is the minimum time of fasting when the autophagy starts?
Very good. That's what I'm going to answer. Thank you. Very good question. You tell me, how many days, leave Ramadan aside for a second, how many days have you been actually fasted, hungry for 8 to 16 hours? Actual hunger, meaning you have not eaten. Water is fine, coffee is fine. No tea with the milk, no sugars, no cookies, no biscuits.
Rarely.
Rarely. So, see, when we say rarely, that means our cells have always been in the well-fed state. That means we have never given a chance for autophagy. Now, I want to answer Sir's question first before I go back to the topic. 8 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours, and onwards. And I would describe in 8 hours, the type of autophagy that starts is called macroautophagy. The 16 hours, the type of autophagy that starts is called chaperone-mediated autophagy. After 16 hours, the type of autophagy that starts is called microautophagy. And this is the research that is done by Dr. Anna Maria Cuervo. So let me actually show you her picture. So, sir, I knew that you would ask this question. This woman, Dr. Anna Maria Cuervo, she's an MD and a PhD. She is a professor in the Department of Development and Nuclear Biology, and she's a professor of Department of Medicine in Albert Einstein College of Medicine in the US. Her team figured out the time when autophagy starts, time of hunger, before her work and her team's work. And I keep interjecting myself. This work on fasting, on autophagy, should have been done by Muslims. Muslims perform Ramadan every year for 1 month. Intense fasting. They should have looked at what happens to our body with this. Instead, the very first time autophagy was discovered, that was a Japanese scientist. And then most of the studies for autophagy were done on animals, mice. So what happens is, you put some mice, चूहों को रख दिया अपने एक जगह पर, उनको 3 दिन खाना नहीं दिया तो वो क्या बिगाड़ लेंगे आपका? So the studies were done on mice, and you would not feed them for 2 days or 3 days. They can't do anything. They're not going to punch you to say, give me food. So early studies said autophagy starts when somebody is hungry for 24 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours. Because they were doing that to mice and they were keeping them hungry for that long. That is why it became impossible for humans to do these kind of fasts. There still is a concept of 3 days water fast, 10 days water fast, but Dr. Anna Maria Curvo was more curious to say, what is really the time when the autophagy starts? So Dr. Sadia says, what is the difference between micro and macro autophagy? I'll
Yes,
explain
yes, I
that
would.
in
Related to this question of Dr. Sadia, my another
G.
question is with you. Do you think that during this fasting, water can
G.
affect autophagy?
No, water cannot affect the autophagy.
Yes, that's very
Water does not affect it. Uh, Coffee does not affect it. Coffee without milk, that does not affect it. Even cucumber does not affect it.
yes,
Cucumber is 96% water,
yes, 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 yes.
right? Okay, so first, the answer to your question, sir, if you see here, I've made this little graph over here in my video. This is a lecture I've done about it. That within 8 hours, we develop macroautophagy and then we develop chaperone
Professor
mediated
Mubin, today
autophagy.
in your lecture, so many professors from different countries, from Karbala, from Iran, from Iraq, from
I am very grateful.
Nigeria, from South Africa. That is why I am requesting you to keep this whole in the English because they are especially for
Absolutely.
this topic. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for everyone to join us from all those international countries. You're very welcome to be here.
Even from
And
India.
very good. Awesome. Very welcome. And I'm trying to keep mostly in the English. And there is a question from Dr. Sadia, black tea and green tea can affect autophagy.
What
Uh,
is the chaperone? What is the
yes. So I'm
micro?
going to go there.
I know, but for the other people,
Absolutely. Okay. So let's very quickly talk about the autophagy for a second. Look, what happens is first, one second. I think I zoomed out. Okay, so first thing, why do we need autophagy? When we said autophagy happens when the cell is in the fasting state, in the less fed state, what happens with autophagy? Here is something that is really important. Look, throughout our childhood, again, you, your patients, your family members, throughout our childhood, as we were eating carbohydrates and we had these reactive oxygen species damaging proteins, and we were trying to remove the proteins with what processes? We were trying to remove them through the chaperone mediated repair. And I'll explain that in a second. And then the ubiquitination. And imagine that the proteins are so much damaged. Why are they so much damaged? Because there is too many reactive oxygen species. Why there are too many reactive oxygen species? Because we ate too much carbohydrates and fried foods. Or we did not eat too much carbohydrates or fried foods, but we are under stress. Cortisol, glucagon, epinephrine, norepinephrine, they cause increase in reactive oxygen species. So stressful state, or we are sleepless, we are sleeping less. Lack of sleep causes increase in reactive oxygen species. Or we are eating good food, but the food is impure. There are impurities in the food. Environment is wrong. The pollutants are present. There is a study, if there are folks from Iran, there was a study that came out from Iran, which was such a wonderful study where they said that when the environment has pollution, the pollutants in our body bind with vitamin D and make vitamin D useless. The result is that you may have normal vitamin D levels, but they would not be available to the cell because they are stuck with the pollutants particles. And such people develop lots of infections, including COVID and others. So that study came out of Iran. It was an amazing study. The point I'm making is there can be many factors that can predispose a cell, that can create propensity for a cell to develop damaged proteins. When the proteins cannot be recycled because they are too much damaged, Then they start accumulating in the cell. You come near a damaged protein. Imagine you are a repair machine. You come near the damaged protein, you say, oh man, it is too much damage. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to leave it here. So imagine you are continuously being fed from your young child age till now, and you have been accumulating damaged proteins, because damaged proteins that are in these big trashy junks, in these big piles, can only be removed by autophagy. These big piles of damaged entangled proteins, they are called, if you wanted to Google and read about them, misfolded protein aggregates. They are the same problems that occur in the brain to cause dementia as well. Misfolded protein aggregates. When these aggregates develop, when these piles of misfolded proteins develop, when we are aging, our cell can be repaired, but these tangles do not go away. They stay. So if I am 56, what is common, what is constant in my cell? A continuous increasing amount of trash in my cell. That is not going anywhere. My cell membranes are
like a garbage on the roads.
correct. That is not going anywhere. I can make new cell membranes. I can make new Golgi apparatuses. I can make new mitochondria. I can make new microtubules. Everything can be new. This trash would just stay there. So then who is going to remove this trash? Do we have a mechanism for this? Yes. We were given the mechanism. That is autophagy. In the autophagy, what happens is a big blob, which is called autophagosome, a big blob of a phagosome is developed near this trash. It takes a big bite out of this trash. It closes that mouth and then digests this bite. And if you allow the autophagy to continue, it would remove that pile. If that pile is removed from within your cell will be as young as baby's cell. So do we want to have a young baby cell? Yes, we want to have a cell that will work correctly. How will it work correctly? When there is no trash in it. Having misfolded protein aggregates in a cell actually creates mechanical problem. Imagine there is insulin receptor here. There is insulin that came in attached with the receptor. The receptor wants to now work. It wants to send a message so that the GLUT transporters can be brought to the surface. But the cell is filled with the trash. How will that message work inside? How will those enzymes work? They have a mechanical obstruction. So when we are aging and we are developing diabetes and we are developing kidney problems and liver problems and the heart problems and the brain problems, what are we really developing? We are developing a continuous pile of trash in our cells because we are not letting autophagy happen. Angelique says, we always advise overweight patients to eat 3 main meals and snack every 2 hours. How does autophagy fits into this? What should we?
Even Professor Yoshinori of the Japan got the Nobel Prize on this talk, as you are telling us,
Yes,
that how you
yes,
can start the autophagy and that kills the cancer cell. Even the Professor Azhar Azhar talked in Karbala when I was there last year. He talked on this, the first cell, you can kill it with autophagy. Yes, this are usually.
yeah.
Yes, yes,
This is
yes,
the Japanese doctor
yes,
who
yes.
found the autophagy. And so you are very correct, sir. So if I go back here, so the question, Angelique said that we advise our patients to eat 3 main meals. No, actually, you advise them to eat more. They would become sicker. Their cells would develop even more trash. and these cells will not clean them up. So how do we clean them up? By autophagy. How do you do autophagy? By fasting. So Dr. Sadia says, can cinnamon, ginger, sanouf, and zira affect autophagy? Okay, so let me, Dr. Sadia, two ways to look at the life. One is that you ask the patient to do fasting so that autophagy can be triggered. At least 8 hours of fasting, at least 8 hours of fasting would start macroautophagy. And let me explain what macroautophagy is. When this is our cell, and in that cell we have Golgi apparatus, we have mitochondria, we have endoplasmic reticulums, right? We have cell membranes of various kinds, we have microtubules. When our cells are working and they're producing reactive oxygen species, when they are making ATP in the mitochondria and the electron transport chain is making reactive oxygen species, those reactive oxygen species would damage the cellular proteins as well. Number one. Number two, when cellular proteins continue to do their function, they become deformed and D-shaped. Just like any machine that works again and again repeatedly will become rusted and old and D-shaped. Such cellular organelle that are becoming damaged while they're working, these organelle would start sending stress signals to nucleus to say, hey man, we are under stress. How do we fix this? Repair chaperones cannot help it. Ubiquitination system cannot help it. Apoptotic system would kill the whole cell.
Yes.
The only system that can help damaged corners of the active machines in the cells is autophagy. So macroautophagy is a process in which big autophagosomes are formed that take bites out of the cellular organelle. So if the Golgi apparatus has a damaged area, this Pac-Man like structure would come near it and take a bite out of it and remove it. After removing it, that area will become like this and it will be repaired and it will become fresh and new and brand new working thing. So macroautophagy starts within 8 hours of fasting and it repairs the cellular organelle.
But not removes the garbages.
No, it doesn't remove the garbages.
Yes,
It takes
yes,
big
yes.
bites out of the
Yes.
organelle.
Yes.
Then comes the chaperone mediated 14 to 16 hours of fasting. 14 to 16 hours of fasting comes the chaperone mediated autophagy. This is one of the most beautiful mechanisms. So what happens is there is a protein called heat shock protein. Actually, this is not one protein. This is a set of proteins called heat shock proteins. And they're called heat shock proteins because there was a time when they were discovered, there was a scientist or set of scientists who put some cells in a petri dish and they heated them up, these cells. When they heated them up, they saw that these cells made a new set of proteins in them that started repairing the cells. And so they call them heat shock proteins. These are the proteins that are formed with the heat shock. This is like if there is a fire, the fire brigade comes over. So you call the fire brigade heat shock fire brigade. It turned out later on that heat shock proteins can actually be formed in a cell in response to any stress, not just the heat, but the cold or the heat or stretch of the cell or stress of the cell. Any stress can cause these proteins to be formed, but their name has become heat shock proteins. Heat shock proteins can become activated in a hungry cell, and they would do what? They will help produce the autophagosomes that would take big bites of the trash. Then the heat shock protein will drag this autophagosome to bring it to a lysosome or to other recycling areas and recycle these proteins. So that is called chaperone-mediated autophagy, in which heat shock proteins act as a chaperone. In my lecture here, I made the diagram that looks like there is a donkey. Here, if you see, this is the macroautophagy. And if I go a bit here, so look, this is the trash. This is a heat shock protein. And this is the lysosome in which this trash will be thrown. So imagine the lysosome is like a bigger fire pit. You take the trash and you throw it in through the fire and you digest it. You take the amino acids out of it and use them. This is called chaperone-mediated autophagy. This is one of the most strong type of autophagy. And this gets started in 14 to 16 hours. That means, my friends, if you, your loved ones, and your patients do not regularly stay hungry from 8 hours to 16 hours, you will be, and your patients will be developing these trash in their cells. When this trash occurs in the cell, then the cell has a few ways to live its life. Imagine you fill my room where I'm teaching with trash. What are my options now? I'll have very hard time teaching, coming into the room, sitting here working because I have trash everywhere. So what are my options? First option is to clear the trash, autophagy. But for autophagy, I have to be hungry. And if you don't make me hungry, you keep feeding me, then what are my options? First option is that I perform apoptosis. I die. The cell says, you know what? I have too much trash in me. That trash is not going anywhere. It is just accumulating every day for 50, 60, 70 years. This human being doesn't care for that trash to go away. I should just die. Because I'm malfunctioning, I'm not working correctly, my DNA is not repairing correctly, I might develop cancers, I might develop other issues, I might become insulin resistant, so I should just better die. I should do apoptosis. So first solution is apoptosis. Would you like your neurons to do apoptosis and die? No. You don't want the neurons to do apoptosis. You would want them to clear themselves and be happy and working. So fasting will make them happy and working, and not fasting will make them die. But here is a problem. Sometimes the cell is so much filled with the trash that they cannot even do apoptosis. Their machinery for apoptosis, apoptotic enzymes cannot function correctly in the trash. Then what does the cell do? What is the second option it has? The cell becomes something that is called senescent cell. If you look at the research here that happens in the US and many countries, a huge problem. There is a term called SASP, senescent associated secretory proteins. SASPs are proteins that are produced by a senescent cell. What is a senescent cell? A senescent cell is a cell that has become so filled with trash, it has become so disabled to function that it is not even able to die anymore. So it just sits there, becomes upset, and keeps releasing inflammatory molecules. Those molecules together are called senescent associated secretory proteins, SASPs. So please pay attention to this one point I'm making now.
This is a big cause of diabetes.
Absolutely, for all diseases.
For all diseases.
So please, for all diseases. So think about it. Imagine that there is a person, me. I don't use other people as an example. Let's use me. I eat wrong. I have been eating wrong, breads and naans and whatever for decades. And my cells are developing these piles of trash in them. Then one day the piles have become so much that all my body cells are having problem working. So what will happen? If it is a muscle cell, I will be fatigued. If it is a liver cell, the liver will not function correctly. If it is a pancreas, that would not work correctly. If it is brain, I'll develop brain fog. So all of a sudden, with age, we start developing diseases. What happened? Your doctor says, well, that is age. No, that is not age. All of your cells are filling with trash together. Correct? And now all of your cells have become source of inflammation. So you are 50 plus. You say, you know what? From today, I got this scared. The doctor told me my CAC score is very high. I have a risk of, cardiovascular event. My cholesterol is very high. I'm going to become a good boy from now on, or good girl. I will not take anything bad anymore. But what are you going to do about that trash? That cell that is filled with the trash is not going to become empty because you said, I'll be good now. That cell is continuously going to produce inflammatory molecules because it is under stress. The stress would only be relieved if the trash goes away. And trash is not going to go away because you said, I'll be a good person now in terms of eating. So the cells, my friend, all of our cells, all the body cells have become source of inflammation. You eat all the good things and you still are inflamed. Why? Because there is trash. So then how do you fix that? You do. So senescent associated proteins is the second mechanism. The third mechanism is going to be autophagy. If autophagy comes in, even those cells that are not working correctly, even for example, somebody who's diabetic, if you perform autophagy in them, their diabetes will start becoming reversed. If they have renal disease, other than the area that has become damaged and scarred and gone away, the remaining tissue that is under inflammation will start becoming healed. I'm sure that all of you over here are aware of the subclinical inflammation. That is inflammation that is happening in everyone who is 20 years, 30 years of age and eating incorrectly. They're developing the inflammatory molecules, but their body doesn't care yet. It's relatively clean. Then that would become chronic inflammation. Where is the chronic inflammation coming in? Are they continuously infected? Are they continuously being damaged by some hammer from outside? No, their cells are filled with the trash. These cells have become factories for inflammatory molecules. So now we do chaperone-mediated autophagy, 14 to 16 hours. What would happen is we will have autophagosomes develop. We'll have heat shock proteins that would drag them and bring them to the lysosomes, and then they would recycle the trash. So now, think about it for a second. If the trash starts reducing, here, this trash starts reducing, will the cell start working normally or not? Let's say this person is diabetic, developed diabetes after 50, 60 years of age. Now they started doing intermittent fasting or Ramadan fasting, correctly fasting, not the bad one. And their autophagy starts happening. When they are hungry, their mTOR is suppressed, their AMPK is activated, their autophagy is, started, and now the trash is going away. Will their cells become better? Will this work better? Yes. So if they have diabetes, will that not go away? Yes. If they have other chronic diseases, chronic inflammatory diseases, they have joint pains, they have muscle fatigues, they have brain fog, they have memory issues, they have eyesight issues, they have liver issues, renal issues. All of those would start improving.
Yes.
So this idea that somebody has become 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, now it is natural that they will be sick. That is wrong. And I just proved it in the beginning of this lecture that every single part of the cell is refurbished, replenished, refreshed within 15 days. Their cell is as young as 15 days. Why would it not work correctly? Because it had trash. If you fix the trash, you're good. So I'm going to quickly look at the. So Dr. Sadia said, Dr. Sadia, you had a question about the caffeine and the other drugs. So let me explain fasting. Fasting, now we understand that fasting simply means that mTOR is suppressed, correct? Which triggers autophagy. That is a basic mechanism. So either we do fasting is cheap and free, and in some religions, mandatory as well, like Ramadan, or there is a thing called fasting mimicking foods. Fasting mimicking foods. What is that? There are foods that you eat. To you, it looks like you ate them, but for body, they don't provide any nutrition. For example, popcorns, not, popcorns with butter and salt, simple straight popcorns. If you eat popcorns, they would fill your stomach. You will feel I'm fed, but they have no nutritional value. That is a fasting mimicking food. You are eating, but you're still not eating. You ate a cucumber. Cucumber is 96% water. You're only going to get 4% proteins and carbs. What is that going to do? Nothing. That is a fasting mimicking food. So there are foods, if somebody cannot stop eating, then they should eat fasting mimicking foods. Then imagine if somebody cannot fast, then they can take medicines that can trigger AMPK system and suppress mTOR systems. Some of those, resveratrol is one. This is a very famous resveratrol is one. Coffee, but has to be 3 cups or more. So not everyone can take 3 cups of coffee every day. Coffee causes autophagy. Resveratrol causes autophagy. There are other supplements and foods that cause autophagy as well. So if somebody cannot fast, then they can take these kind of supplements, or they can take fasting mimicking foods. So Professor Rashid Saab said, any effect of caffeine or related products on speed of autophagy? Yes. So as I said, coffee, there was a study that came out that said people who take 3 to 5 cups of coffee daily, that's a lot of coffee, they have a lot of autophagy happening in their body. Angelique says, I suppose one day a week fasting will not be enough to get the process going. How many times? So this is a beautiful question. And Angelique, this is a very interesting topic. The reason for that is there has been no study so far. Maybe the folks over here can take up that study to do. There has been no study today that says one fast, intermittent fast or Ramadan fast or other fast, one fast would reduce how much trash? Reduce trash, how much? There is no such study. So if you don't mind, if there are people from all over the world, it is not necessary that everybody would work with Islam, but I'm going to use Islam as an example. In Islam, we say that every 1 month out of 12, you have to fast. So again, I have already established that we Muslims do not fast correctly. So don't see the results in us, but look at the order. The order is to fast 1 month for after every 11 months. That means it is one fast covers 10 days or 11 days. That means if you fast once a week, that would take care of all the bad foods eaten during that week. If you fast 2 weeks, twice a week, then you have taken care of that week and a week before. And every week you can keep taking care of a week before and now keep cleaning up the cells. And if you fast more than once a week, then you can clear. For example, if you fast for a whole month, you can clear your cells for the whole year. That is what I understand from Islamic point of view. But there is no scientific study that says how many fasts should be done. So then how do you work with your patient about that? The way you work with your patient is you ask them to start doing intermittent fasting. How do they start intermittent fasting? Please don't put them on a rigorous fasting structure right away. Ask them what is their eating schedule. Breakfast, any snacks, lunch. This is the kind of thing they'll say: snack, dinner, then before sleeping, something again, milk, snack, something. So the first thing they should do is remove all the snacks and leave just the meals. Once they have done that, they come to you after 3 weeks and they say, yes, no snacks, no Pepsis and Cokes and teas and cookies and biscuits, nothing. Good. Then you say, start moving lunch either early or late. Start bringing it near another meal, or start bringing dinner earlier. So now they're doing breakfast at the regular time. Then they have lunch. Let's say instead of 12, they have it at 1, but maybe 12. And then dinner, instead of 8 or 9, they're doing it 6, 5, 4. And then they keep bringing them near and make it 1. So now they've gone from 3 meals to 2 meals. Now, after they have 2 meals, they can start. So instead of saying breakfast and lunch, I'm just going to say 2 meals, meal 1 and 2. Bring the window down to 6 hours between them. The remaining is fasting time. And now you start seeing what is the result of the diseases. Ideally, within a month or so, the patient is going to start saying that, hey, I have less pains in my joints, if they had pains. Or they'll say, I feel less fatigue. Or they'll say, I feel more sharp. Actually, this feeling sharp is even in the Muslims. If you ask Muslims that during Ramadan, do they feel sharp? Do they become more active? They become more angry more easily? They become sharper because the neurons do autophagy and they become more active like our younger days. So we feel we are sharp. So the patient would start reporting these things. So you can then say, okay, please continue, and then see where do they stabilize. So Angelique says, get the process. How many times a week does one need to fast? So that is the answer for that. What advice then for diabetes patients or insulin, should they reduce their dosage? So I actually had created that little chart. So I'll go there in a second. Dr. Ilyas says, fasting on Monday and Thursday is sunnah and helpful to get good results. Of course. So if you have 2 days of fast, that means you took care of that week and the week before. If we were doing that from a young age, we will never, in theory, become sick from the inflammatory states. We'll become sick from the bacteria and the virus and the other things, but not in the chronic inflammatory states. That means we should not develop diabetes. We should not develop muscle pains and brain fogs and cancers and such things. But horrible to think that Muslims actually have such bad habits in fasting that they increase their diabetes during the fasting times. Okay, so I'm going to go to the diabetes for a second. Let me just see other questions. Does CRP, ESR play any role as to guide the physician? Absolutely. So there is Dr. Angelique, you have very good questions, and I'm going to answer that question in 2 ways. I'm going to Google something for you. Dr. Barbara E. Corky, Banting Award lecture. So there is a doctor here in the US. Her name is Dr. Barbara E. Corky. She wrote in 2011 a lecture which is given a Banting Award. A Banting Award is given to anyone who has done something great in the field of diabetes. This is her lecture. And I would send these links over to Dr. Mulazim Hussain Saab, sir. He's my teacher as well. And he can then post
Yes,
it.
I will share. I will share.
So if I go back here, where was that? Dr. Barbara E. Corky Banting Award. So here, what she said was, This is her lecture. Look at this. What she said, our beta cell become hyper secreting. We start making more insulin than normal because of irritants and incorrect and impure foods. So she said, how do we find out that the person is in an inflammatory state? The hypersecretion of insulin is because of the inflammatory state, which causes the irritation of the beta cells, and the beta cells make more insulin, which then causes the resistance. And so how do we find that out? We find that out by LP equals 10 and beta over alpha. So she said the redox state of our cell, the damaged state of our cell, is represented in the bloodstream by these two biomarkers. So she said, we all doctors should get beta to A ratio and lactate to pyruvate ratio. Every patient. This would tell you the redox state, which will then tell you what is happening. So if you got CRP, ESR, and lactate to pyruvate ratio and beta to alpha ratio, you have a good idea of what is the inflammatory state of your patient. So K. Sugnathi says, coffee is without milk, sugar. Yes. So milk or sugar can actually bring in nutrients that would switch a cell back from fasting towards growth. And a cell, our cells have a very interesting behavior. You know that we live with the circadian rhythms. You know that we have internal clocks in the cells, right? So what happens is when the cell starts feeling fasted or hungry or starving, it has a clock. And the clock starts going 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour, 6, 7, 8. As soon as it hits 8, it says, okay, macroautophagy, you start. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, chaperone-mediated autophagy, you start. Neuronal autophagy, you start. This is why it is necessary that we have autophagy in the sleep as well, so that our brain can be cleaned. So we have an internal clock in every cell for autophagy. As soon as we give it some nutrient, you eat a tiny candy. That candy sends in insulin and glucose. The cell would reset the clock and say, okay, everybody stop. Now we're going to wait for 8 hours when we become hungry from then. So imagine that your candy is a 5-minute spike. The cell's clock stopped. After the spike is over, the clock starts from 0 again. And now 8 hours later, if you stay hungry for 8 hours. So even a tiny injection of tiny nutrient, amino acids or lipids or sugars will break the autophagy or the clock. Dr. Kessa says, fast for 10 to 15 or 16 hours in Ramadan. Yes, that is an amazing fast. Atif says, okay, so then, all right. Now I'm going to go and answer that question from Dr. Angelique about the diabetes and insulin. We always advise overweight. So, okay, I'm going to go here. This is what I actually started with today, or I prepared for. So let's go to my actual part of the lecture. So during Ramadan, metformin, DPP-4 inhibitors, GLP-1s are fine to give. They are safe. They can continue to take them, patients. However, if the patient is taking insulin, they're taking insulin or sulfonylureas or SGLT2 inhibitors, then they need to correct them. They need to adjust them. Insulin is a more complex system to be adjusted. At least in the Pakistan, what I see is that the doctor and the patient do not become enough educated to understand how to adjust the insulin. So they simply say, don't have any rosa, just don't have the fast. But having a patient not have a fast is really preventing them from becoming healthy. So we have to learn to understand how to do it. Now, SGLT2 blockers like gliflozones or liflozones, they can cause euglycemic DKA. So that is very important that if their patient is fasting and they're taking SGLT2, you can actually stop SGLT2s during the Ramadan. Otherwise, the patient can enter a DKA state. Sulfonylureases, they are also high risk for hypoglycemia because these are secretagogues and they can cause unnecessary amounts of insulin to be released. So they can be reduced as well. Insulin is more important to understand. So very simply, and this is why doctors, I think, kind of avoid having the discussion with their patient, and they just tell the patient, just keep doing, not having rosa or fast and just stay as before. The reason for that is one important aspect to count is the basal insulin calculation. Look, even if I have zero carb eating, I would still be needing insulin because my liver will make glucose from the stored glycogen and from gluconeogenesis. So when the liver makes glucose, I need to have insulin to push that glucose into the cells. So I need basal insulin even if the person is zero carb intake person. So how much of that insulin is necessary? They're fasting or not fasting, doesn't matter. Their liver is going to make glucose. So that is, this formula is very commonly available online. 0.2 units per kilogram for people who are less insulin resistant. So that is for a 70 kilogram person, 14 units per day have to be given. They take carbohydrates or not. Mid-range, some resistance, 0.25 unit per kilogram. So that is 17.5 units per day have to be given as the basal insulin. And if somebody is very resistant, then 0.3 units per kilogram or 21 unit per day have to be given. And of course, then you calibrate them. And I would actually recommend for all of us physicians to look at this Omnipod. I'm sure that there are other versions from other countries as well. This is what we have in the US. Omnipod is a pod that is filled with insulin. It goes for 3 days. It is attached just like continuous glucose monitor. It connects with your continuous glucose monitor. And every 5 minutes, it would inject the right amount of insulin that is needed. So continuous glucose monitor would look at the glucose levels. Every 5 minutes, that would connect with this pump, and the pump would inject the right amount. And this pump is good for 3 days. So it has changed the life of type 2 and type 1 diabetics because they don't have to care for what insulin, how much insulin, what unit to take, what am I going to eat, when am I going to be fasting. They just have the Omnipod running and the pod is just doing the work, talking with the continuous glucose monitor. So this is a very, very important new invention or a device that I believe those folks, especially who are at risk of developing renal diseases or coronary artery disease or strokes, they should just work and get this one. So I'm going to go back to the insulin for a second. I'm going to see here. Dr. Sadeh says, what is the difference between micro and macro autophagy? So macro, I spoke, that is big bites out of the organelle. Microautophagy is tiny bites of the trash and digesting in place. Chaperone mediated is to bring the trash over to the lysosomes for recycling or proteasomes for recycling. Plus, when do they become activated? That's the difference. So let me just very quickly see. Dr. Cassis says, which one is good for our cell, black coffee or coffee with milk? So milk is harmful when you are doing it. Of course, milk is good because it is a growth molecule. But when you are fasting, at that time, you do not want anything to grow the cells because that would break the autophagy cycle or clock. So anytime you have milk or sugar or lipids or proteins or sugars, they would break autophagy clocks. Selma Saiba says, how frequently and at what times should a diabetic do blood glucose test to regulate proper dosages? So that's a very interesting question. So if we talk about the nowadays continuous glucose monitors are available, so that is just a continuous thing that I prefer that because patient can very quickly understand what to do. Otherwise, during Ramadan, just once or twice during the day with the blood pricking, and I believe that for a diabetic patient, their rosa will not be disturbed if they take a pinch of blood and test their glucose.
Professor
Because
Mubin, do you think that we can open this forum for this question answer if we have completed?
absolutely. So let me just quickly, very
Okay, okay.
quickly finish this one topic, and then we can go to questions. So this is the weight-based basal glucose levels that we must do. The other thing is that as you adjust the patient's glucose, what you do is you do a basal test. What that means is you give them the first fast and you put them back on the basal. And I'll talk about bolus in a second. You give them the basal and then you look at their glucose levels once or twice during the day. If the glucose is spiking, that means, of course, the insulin is low. So you increase the insulin. If glucose is too low, then the insulin is more. Or if it is flat, then you're fine. So that is one area to fix. Then the other area is how much insulin to give. So the insulin to give is going to be according to the insulin to carb ratio of that person. All of us have very different ways of processing carbohydrates. So if you give me 1 unit of insulin, how many carbohydrate grams it processes is different than to you or somebody else. So that is called insulin to carbohydrate ratio. Normal way to calculate that ratio is that if your patient comes to you and says, I already am taking insulin and I'm taking, let's say, 50 units every day. What you do is you divide 500 by 50. 500 is a constant number. That gives you the insulin to carbohydrate ratio. If the patient comes in for the first time, he has never taken the insulin before. So of course you do not have a total daily dose at the moment. So then what you do is you do this weight based, as I said here. And then from there, as you continue to adjust their insulin, you'll find out their ICR. Now, the question is that when the patient is fasting, what should they do? The answer is very simple. Their normal bolus at the iftar time, because the meal is big. And then 25% to 40% reduced bolus at the seher time because meal is small. If the meal is not small, then stay with the regular dose. Right? So that is the basic idea for the way to handle the insulin. So let's look at the questions. Angelique says, Mubin, you gave us so much information. I would request that you do a follow-up on this topic to reinforce today's information and also teach us more. So Angelique, I'm very happy to do that. Dr. Professor Mulazim Saab would decide if he would invite me, I'll come over. Dr. Selma Saba says, my answer is awaited. Let me see the question.
Professor Salma, you directly ask the question, Professor Salma.
Okay.
So there's something wrong with my audio, so I don't want to ask. Can you hear me clearly?
Dr. Salma, ji.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Mubin. It's such a pleasure hearing you again. I've got many devices today in all my instruments, and there's electricity showing where
Salma, there is a lot of echoes in your voice.
That's why the question was the time of the blood sugar test.
Dr. Salma, I think you have 2 mics on. If you can mute
Dr.
one mic,
Sharma, your question, we are not understanding the question.
there is echo. There is a question that you wrote.
Okay, can you hear me now?
No,
Can you
Dr. Salma, you have logged in from two devices. Please turn off one device.
I have turned off one because both my devices are out of order.
No, it is okay.
Now
Assalamu
Now
alaikum,
good.
it's okay.
everyone. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Mubin Sayed.
Walaikum assalam.
My
Walaikum
question
assalam.
was, I'm diabetic and there are many diabetics here. What is the proper time if we don't have that continuous instrument put in which measures the blood sugar continuously? What are the ideal times of checking our blood sugar so that we can play around with our dosages?
Okay, very good question. So, in the beginning, the first, second days when you start adjusting your dose, knowing glucose before the meal will tell you how much correction to do. So, for example, before before sahur, what is your dawn phenomena happening and how much glucose is produced before this sahur time. So that would be, you will do that just once or twice and you'll know what is the dawn phenomena in you. That's one. That would give you the correcting dose to be taken at iftar. Second is 2 hours after the iftar, which would tell you how much further correction you need to do with the whatever iftar, sahar. 2 hours after sahar, and I know that some patients say that I would not want to prick my finger because the blood drop comes out and that would void the rosa. I think it doesn't do that for the patients. So 2 hours after would allow you to figure out how well the meal is processed. So that would guide you for the morning insulin level. Then one during the day near the lunchtime when you're not eating anything, but just to see what is the levels at that time, that would tell you the basal level correction if needed. And then of course 2 hours after the dinner, just to see what is that going to do for night. Eventually what you would do is, if you have done these couple of days, then you know what is the correction dose you would need at the sahar time. What is the sahar meal and the dose you need to add rapid for the sahar meal. The lunch would tell you how much basal should be taken. And then dinner would tell you what is needed for the night. So that is what you would then calculate and decide when you take basal at night or morning and what is the bolus you would take.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And we should actually strive for becoming non-diabetic.
Professor Angelique, you can ask the question directly. Professor Angelique.
Thanks. I don't really have a question except that I'm so overwhelmed with everything that I've heard because we always, we are advised, especially I'm back on diabetes, but on patients, yes, even diabetes patients, about that 2 hour snacks in between. So I'm wondering again, this all the hormones, the gastric hormones and leptin and all of that, and incretin and all of that, how does it all fits into this? So my head is just spinning about all of this. But yes, let's...
Professor Rashid.
The smaller chunks for the next topics. Dr. Kasser says, doctor always says about borderline sugar level, what actually it's mean and what to do in Ramadan and after. So borderline sugar, is that the basal sugar? So what happens is, even if somebody does not take any carbohydrates, for example, during the day, we're not taking anything. We're taking something at the seher time and iftar time. Even during the day when we are not taking carbohydrates, our liver is still making carbohydrates.
You're synthesizing it.
And the more insulin resistant we are, the more glucose it will make. So we might actually end up with a huge spike during the day and we'll say, what the heck? I did not eat anything. Where did this glucose come from? That is your liver. So you have to give basal insulin levels to make sure liver does not do that. And whatever glucose it makes, that gets into the cells.
Professor Rashid,
Uh,
Professor Rashid.
Yes, yes. Dr. Mubin, excellent presentation on autophagy and benefits of fasting. So, can we summarize that the 1 month Islamic fasting is the minimal requirement for the basal autophagy, and additional fasting every Monday and Thursday, as per Sunnah, they are the additional boost for the health to start the autophagy?
Absolutely. So you are correct. Uh, if you have that 1 month, that kind of covers the whole year. But if you have two fast every week, one fast every week covers that week for 7 days or 10 days. Two fast every week would cover that week and a week before. If we have the habit of two fast every week and then Ramadan, I don't think we should ever get any chronic inflammatory disease.
That's great. That's great news.
Professor Rashid, Professor Mubin, I am fasting since my life. I am doing intermittent fasting. What I do, early in the morning, I take a cup of tea or a small piece of bread. Then
Yes,
at
sir.
12 or 1, I take the lunch. But I
Mm,
do not take anything in the dinner or anything else except whenever I am sitting in when I
mhm,
am a guest or something else. And that is why
mhm.
I am on the intermittent fasting from a very, very long time. So that is why, and even Dr. Moveen told this story to my wife. And my wife is now normal. There is no diabetes. We both are
Oh,
on
wow. She
intermittent
has
fasting.
become normal, sir?
Yes, yes, normal.
MashaAllah.
Everything is normal without taking any medicine now.
MashaAllah.
So that is very
MashaAllah.
blessing of this intermittent fasting, and fasting of Ramadan is no doubt is very good. But another question related to this, me to Dr. Mubin, that if we are in a Ramadan fasting, but we take a lot of things to eat in the Sahri, and even a lot of things to eat in the uh, Aftari.
Iftar.
Can it disturb our autophagy?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So the way to look at that is the following, and I also want to make sure that I answer Dr. Sadia's answer, so she doesn't think I'm ignoring it. She says, "Can cinnamon, sauce, zira, and ginger affect autophagy?" Dr. Sadia, I have no idea. These are non-allopathic medicines
No, no,
or
that's it.
substances, so I'll have to do some research to find them.
Okay,
So, sir, to your
if
question,
if
sir,
yes, yes, any,
from
जी sir.
seher to iftar,
Hmm.
imagine there are 14 hours.
Hmm.
And if you have eaten something, even if it is a lot, but if it is something that is quickly absorbed and removed, then you may end up with some autophagy.
Uh,
But if you have eaten things that would stay in the
Delayed
stomach for a
digestion.
longer time, then the autophagy would not start easily.
That's right. If we do not have the question, or can we end the session today? Professor
Absolutely.
Salma Kundi?
It's such a pleasure listening to Dr. Mubin. None of us wants to end it. But we request you, Dr. Mulazim, please get him frequently on these webinars.
Professor Salma, next webinar is on our NIPA, and same Professor Mubin is there, because this webinar was already fixed for the NIPA, but I changed it due to the early starting of the Ramadan. So on
Can
the
we
significance of Ramadan, I requested Professor Mubin to change it to the diabetes. So inshallah, I will request Professor Mubin. No doubt you are very busy, but you will give the time to us, because today, no doubt, only
Happy to.
Pakistani are sitting. All the international peoples are here, and inshallah, in next Professor Salma, next webinar, inshallah, we will be with here again on the Nipah virus.
And my request would be, can we hold it after Eid? Because waking up at this time on a Sunday in Ramzan is very difficult for most of us.
Yes,
Agreed.
that is why it's too late you are today.
Besides that, we had electricity problem as well, and I don't want to miss
But
Mubin's
you
lectures.
you can see me that how I am ready. My wife was saying, "Where are you going?" And I am going to attend the
Yeah,
webinar.
mashallah. None of us can beat you, Dr. Mulazim.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Kaisar Sajad. Kaisar
Yes,
Sajad,
sir.
can you
I'm here.
conclude today's session?
Thank you very much, Mulazim Saab. And I think that was a excellent, always Dr. Mubin presenting excellent information about the topic. And today,
Talib Balga.
Talim Balgan, yes, I always say Talim Balgan. And I'm really appreciate Dr. Professor Mulazim Saab and Dr. Salma Kundi
Salma Kundi.
for Salma Kundi Sahiba for the continuation of this PMA 151 webinar regularly, which is amazing. Fantastic work you people are doing. And Dr. Mubin Saab, you did very well. And I thank you to you as well as all the participants from Pakistan and all over the country. I really appreciate in the month of Ramzan, they have spared some time to learn something and to gain something from Dr. Mubin on a very important topic. Thank you very much, everybody, and Allah bless you all in Ramadan.
Dr. Mubin,
Thank you.
before concluding today's session, can you give
जी सर
2 or 3 minutes in Urdu, the summary
जी
of
बिल्कुल
today's in Urdu, purely in your language?
ठीक जी ठीक है बिस्मिल्लाह सर जी सो द बेसिक आइडिया इज़ दैट हमें अपना जो सेल है हमारे जिस्म के होता ये है कि जब हम मुसलसल खाते हैं सारी उम्र खाते हैं सुबह दोपहर शाम दरमियान में स्नैक्स भी लेते हैं उससे हमारे सेल्स के अंदर आहिस्ता आहिस्ता गार्बेज इकट्ठा होने लग जाता है वो जो गार्बेज है वो 50-60 साल की उम्र में पहुंचते हैं तो वो इतना ज़्यादा भर जाता है कि वो सेल के फंक्शन को ख़राब करता है जिससे हमारा सेल जब काम सही नहीं करता तो उससे हर तरह की बीमारियां अगर लिवर सही काम नहीं करता तो लिवर की बीमारी है किडनी सही काम नहीं कर रहा तो किडनी की बीमारी है तो सेल जो है अगर ये ट्रैश उसमें इकट्ठा ना हो तो बाकी सारा सेल जो है वो तो हर 15-20 दिन में नया बनता है उसकी दीवारें नहीं बनती हैं उसके अज्जा नहीं बनते हैं डीएनए रहता है सारी उम्र डीएनए की अगर कोई डैमेज आ गया तो वो रह सकता है और अगर सेल में ट्रैश है तो डीएनए को रिपेयर करना मुश्किल हो सकता है जैसे कैंसर्स होते हैं सारा कुछ ट्रैश से शुरू होता है तो उस ट्रैश को साफ़ करने के लिए जो अल्लाह ने हमारे लिए दिया हुआ है मैकेनिज़्म वो है ऑटोफेजी ऑटोफेजी मैकेनिज़्म सिर्फ तब चलता है जब हम 8 से 14-16 घंटे तक भूखे हों तब वो मैकेनिज़्म चलता है और वो सेल की सफाई करता है आप यूँ समझ लीजिए बहुत बड़े गार्बेज ट्रक हैं जो सिर्फ तब शहर में आते हैं जब शहर बिल्कुल खाली हो वो आते हैं और सेल को साफ़ करते हैं उसके लिए भूखा होना ज़रूरी है तो अगर आप कभी भी भूखे नहीं हुए सारी ज़िंदगी तो वो सेल साफ़ नहीं हुए उसकी वजह से बीमारियां हो रही तो आप उसको ये रमज़ान आए या वैसे हर वीक में 1 या 2 मरतबा जब आप फास्टिंग करें तो उससे वो सेल साफ़ होने लग जाता है और फिर वो ऐसे यंग और नॉर्मल एक्ट करता है जैसे पहले थे तो हमें शुगर होनी नहीं चाहिए हमें जॉइंट पेन्स नहीं होने चाहिए फटीग्स नहीं होनी चाहिए ब्रेन फॉग नहीं होनी चाहिए क्योंकि हमारा सेल यंग है तो उसको साफ़ करने का तरीका ऑटोफेजी है
Thank you so much.
जी सर
Inshallah, we'll request next coming week on this webinar. Thank you so much. सबको ये रमज़ान मुबारक हो पाकिस्तान जिंदाबाद
थैंक यू